Hello authors, I'm Joanne Morrell, children's and young adult fiction writer and author of short non-fiction for authors. Thanks for joining me for the Hybrid Author podcast, sharing interviews from industry professionals to help you forge a career as a hybrid author, both independently and traditionally publishing your books. You can get the show notes for each episode and sign up for your free author pass over at the Hybrid Author website to discover your writing process, get tips on how to publish productively, and get comfortable promoting your books at www.hybridauthor.com.au. Let's crack on with the episode. Hello authors! I hope you're all keeping well in whatever part of the world you reside and listen to the podcast in. Today's interview is with Irish novelist, poet and director of the Alliance of Independent Authors, Orna Ross. And Orna is chatting to us about annual planning for creatives. We touch upon what annual planning for creatives is, what's involved in the process, why it's important, on how creatives can go about getting further educated on planning, working directly with Orna herself. So in my author adventure this week, it's still very much a publisher-focused week. The ebook is up for freelance writing, quick tips for fast success across all channels. That's probably been the easiest format that I've had to do for these books. The print book is still under review. So I uploaded through Ingram Spark and I got my e-proof copy to have a look, and I was reviewing it but from back to front, so from the back pages down to the front, and then I thought that was a bit weird because I've had done e-proofs before and it's never been like in that way, and then I thought maybe that had something to do with the printing, the way it was printed, so I approved it. But then in the dashboard, for those who haven't used Ingram Spark before, there's like a title page and you can see the books that you've got listed with them, and my back cover was showing, not the front cover, which I queried with them. And it turns out I had ticked the option reading from right to left rather than left to right. And my husband was like, why would that even be on there? But obviously that is a way of reading, so it is an option, and yeah, I don't know. So I royally stuffed that part up, and thankfully Ingram support were quite quick to rectify it. However, I have had the other e-proof come through right way around this time, but there's still just one issue which is still getting rectified at the moment. So it's quite timely, the process. If something's out, then you've still got to wait like another, can be between 2 and 3 business days for either someone to respond or for something to get fixed. But they are trying to work as quick as they can, I guess, at this time of year. The other issue I came across uploading print book to Amazon directly through KDP Select was my Ingram front cover doesn't fit the same template as the Amazon one. So I've got to rectify this as well, but I'm no designer, so whether I get in touch with my cover designer or give it a try and do it myself, I'm not sure. I've also been tinkering with the audiobook format. I am trying to upload it to Findaway Voices, which is an audiobook distributor, and I haven't ever done audiobook formatting before, so it's a new experience for me, and it's sort of asking for the audio to be chopped up into specific parts, which is fine, I can do that. But also was having trouble getting the image, my front cover image, to be, the size of an audiobook image. So these are all things that if you're going to do these formats, you need to kind of consider. But thankfully I have some very nice friends who helped me out there, and I got that organised pretty quickly. But when I was uploading the audio, even though it's MP3 format, I kept getting errors, and I had to get in touch with them saying, as far as I'm aware, what I'm uploading is correct, what's the problem? And they got back pretty quickly to say that they knew of the issue and they were working hard to rectify it. So it was something from their end, which I was kind of glad about, because I thought, nothing's ever simple, or it certainly doesn't feel that way when you're independently publishing. And, it's definitely not the easier route as some people think. But once you know how to do it properly, you get in a groove, I'm sure everything will be fine. And although I have done some of these processes before, I've stopped and started for so long now, it's almost like I've got to educate myself again each time. But I will persevere, as it's been going on for a long time. So I'm working hard on getting the first book formats up and going, then I will work on the second books. And then I will celebrate. So if you love the podcast or any of the episodes has helped you further in your author career, you can now pay it forward by buying me a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com/thehybridauthor. Or you can leave me a review on whatever platform you listen to the podcast on to help other writers like you discover the podcast. Let's all support each other. Orna Ross is an Irish historical novelist, poet, and founder of the Alliance of Independent Authors. Enjoying book sales in 120 countries worldwide, her work has won several awards and accolades, including the Bookseller 100 listings of the most influential people in publishing. My goodness, we're absolutely honoured to have you with us today, Orna. Welcome to the Hybrid Author Podcast.
Thank you, Joanne. Delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So obviously we've just heard a little snippet about who Orna Ross is, but can you tell us, how did you end up in the creative industries?
Yeah, so I always wanted to be a writer, but when I was a young person, which is a long time ago, girls didn't really think about becoming writers. I grew up in Ireland, as you can probably hear from the accent. In Ireland, writers were W.B. Yeats and George Bernard Shaw and Oscar Wilde. They were all men and they were all dead. So I grew up thinking I'd like to teach English, and that's where I started. And I did an English lit degree and history, and just always had an interest in books. I was just a bookworm, and books saved my life in loads of ways. Taught for a while, and that didn't really suit me, and then kind of set an intention. I want to earn my living from writing. So I started off as a journalist, freelance journalist, features journalism, and then eventually wrote a novel, first a non-fiction book and then a novel. And then self-publishing happened, and that was the best move of my writing life, without a doubt. But in between, I did some university teaching. I started off teaching creative writing, but then I moved into creativity studies within a women's studies postgraduate department, and I was working with women in very kind of extreme situations, so immigrant women, women prisoners, people like that, and began to kind of, I had an epiphany one night when I realized, I literally heard a voice saying the thing that makes the book makes everything, or something to that effect. And I was there, oh gosh. And I started exploring the creative process and how it could be used with these women who were in these very, situations that seemed unchangeable, seemed like they were stuck, seemed like it was going to be very, very difficult for them to make things happen. And it was incredibly powerful. And so I became really interested in creativity, the process for change and personal transformation, as well as obviously in my work, in my writing. And then because I was now a publisher, a self-publisher, an indie author, also in my publishing. And so that interest has just kind of grown and grown. So that's it. And I've kind of distinguished the two in my mind. A creative in my mind is somebody who earns their living from consciously creating something, and be it books or whatever else. And a creativist is someone who applies the creative process to everything they do in life. So yeah, my interest just continues to grow. There's more and more really interesting research coming out every single day, from a psychological perspective, from a philosophical perspective, from a neuroscientific perspective. So many different perspectives now on creativity, and I just love reading everything about it, and then turning that into very practical programs for people that they can apply to their work. And maybe even eventually I might do life programs too. I'm not sure about.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. Really, really incredible, powerful stuff there as well. Things that were coming to mind when I was at uni. I didn't get to do this unit that they done, which was writing therapy. And I was really bummed because I thought, oh, that sounded really good. And was that the sort of stuff you were doing with the women who...
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think there's a continuum between therapy and creativity. I think a lot of us turn to creative work to heal, although we may not know that. And then once the healing has happened, the same process takes you into the next level, and then the next level, and then the next level. So if you are in touch with your own creative capacities, if you are regularly tapping into creative flow, that's a really positive thing for your well-being, mental, physical. I mean, all of that is now, we know it anyway. We feel it. Everybody knew it. The ancients knew it. The sages from literally 10,000 years ago were making marks that told us that they felt these things. But now we've got science showing us what's actually going on in the brain while we are in creative mode. And you can be in creative mode making your breakfast, or you could be in non-creative mode writing your book. It's not the activity that is by definition creative, it's how you do it. And I think that's why we get very muddled when we're trying to be more creative, is that we focus on the what and not enough on the how.
And also with creative as well, it's like you said, it's not just book writing, it's it could be business, it can be all sorts of things that in your life that would you say it's more like a mindset?
It is definitely I think of it as a mind mode. So I don't think any part of our mind is set. I think we're very fluid and we're constantly moving between different modes as we encounter whatever is coming up for us in our life. And what's coming up can be external or internal. We're in this kind of dialogue with life constantly. So the mind mode that you meet a situation with will determine, both your experience of it and your outcome. And so again, it's that distinction between the product, when you're consciously creating the product that you want to create, the end product, but the process that's going to get you there. In the most common metaphor used for creativity, it's the destination is one thing, but the journey is long, especially when you're making books, and the journey has to be created moment by moment.
Yeah, I think that's life's definition as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm really interested that you raised business there, actually, because I am passionate about creative business, because so often we've polarized those two things, and creatives, writers, all of us, we tend to say, this is the creative fun bit over here, and that's the business boring bit over there. And, if I have a mission around all of these things, and particularly this planning for profit for publishers, for self-publishers, it's about integrating the creative with the money, because money is hugely creative. Business is just another word for money flow, so it's about connecting with that in the most creative way possible, and not setting up, you mentioned mindsets, not creating mindsets that are stopping you from actually enjoying the flow and making more stuff and making more money.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Amazing. So today's topic is, like you mentioned, annual planning for creatives. So we're going to get into how, creatives can be creative with their annual planning, because that's part of it. So no one has to think of planning like, but maybe be creative about it. So can you tell us, what is annual planning for creatives, and why is it important to plan annually? Personally, for me, I don't think I can get past 3 months and then I'm sort of left floundering around. So annually feels quite big, quite a length of time.
Yes, and 5 years and 10-year plans are also a good idea. I suppose why it's important, you're absolutely right about the quarter, the 3 month, and that is the core actually of the annual planning, is that you work in quarters or in a smaller bucket. Sometimes I've had mums who've said to me, these quarters don't suit me, but I'm working in term times, which is equally fine. That's the kind of manageable amount of time that you can hold and you can see, and that you're least likely to overestimate or underestimate. So there's that saying, that we kind of overestimate what we can do in a year, but underestimate what we can do in a year and overestimate what we can do in a shorter time. Well, a quarter is a really good bucket of time to neither overestimate nor underestimate. But it is important. The year becomes important in terms of thinking long term. and particularly for authors, I think, and particularly for self-publishing authors. One of the reasons that I encourage annual planning is because it always takes longer than we think it's going to take. And we're already thinking in years. So a year already has significance for us. You know, we've birthday every year. We've the big seasonal selling season that we've got going on at the moment. Christmas rolls around every year. So we're used to kind of thinking in terms of annual milestones anyway. A year allows us to do a bit of longer term thinking. So creative planning begins with your values. And these are things that don't change too much over time. So when you're thinking in the longer term, you're thinking big picture, and then you break that down into more strategically manageable sort of buckets like the quarter. So it's important to think about the longer term because that allows us to think big enough to motivate us into creative flow. So we can, if we're constantly just thinking about the smaller strategic, I need to do this, I got to do that, you know, my to-do list, it can all get a bit dry and joyless. But the bigger picture is what keeps us connected to flow, and that's why it's so important from a creative perspective.
So with annual planning, say for the year, and in my mind, I'm just picturing like a big long calendar thing. You would say around what, you know, we're at the end of the year, so sitting down to annual plan for the year, looking at the year in a full and just thinking what are all the things that I want to achieve next year, and then either having like a list. How do you go about beginning the annual planning process, I suppose? Is it just thinking about what you would like to achieve in that year, or where you would like to be at the end of next year?
Yeah, that's kind of there, but that's not where you start. So you go back to basics first of all, and the basics begin with your values. So the whole idea of creative planning is that you're creating an integrated work. I represent it as a triangle, and the triangle has pleasure on one side and purpose on the other and profits down at the base, and in the middle is values and the value that you offer. So at an annual planning level, we begin there. And before we even get into the pre-intention stage, before we even set our creative intentions, first of all, we look at things like your mission, which is kind of what you want to change in the world, your passion, what really gives you joy and what you really enjoy. And the two of those together give you a sense of purpose. And then we look outwardly at what brings in profit. So the values that you have internally, and then the value that you're offering externally, bringing those together into an integrated system. And that means looking at our work with three different hats on. So we wear a maker hat to produce our writing and produce the books and produce the marketing kind of materials that go around the book, which might be, you know, a crowdfunder campaign, or it might be your social media, or it might be your book placement. Whatever we need to make falls under the maker hat. Then there is the marketeer, and that is a promotional activity and sales activity. So that's the activity you do not to actually make the content that will go out, but how are you going to get it out there? How do you reach influencers? How do you reach readers? And then the third hat that you wear is the manager. And the manager kind of looks after the process and the pace and makes sure that maker and marketeer have what they need to do their work. So we kind of look at all of that. We explore all of that first of all. And then there's a pre-intention phase where we kind of throw out all the possible things we could do, as sort of a love to-do list, and really brainstorm that under the three hats, and then do a selection process that breaks it down. So what happens very often with annual planning is that people come to the workshop and they have an idea in their head, I want to do the ABC next year, and then they leave actually with a different list. What it definitely is not is a big long list of things to do.
I was just going to say, it sounds a lot more in depth than what I had in my mind, which was like just reviewing the months of the year, I suppose, and then effectively like a diary, I suppose, marking off the things that you want to get done. So it just, yeah, it sounds like it's a lot more valuable for sure than that. sort of thing.
Well, yeah, valuable. I like the pun there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing is that if you're already upset and ready and you have your year and you're all on top of it and you're really enjoying your work and you're really making good profits and you're really connected with your own sense of purpose, then you don't need this. This is for people who either aren't managing to get stuff out the door, the productivity is not where it should be, or they're not making money from the activity. Because if you're a publisher, you're in business, you run a publishing business, and that should be a profitable business. Now, you might be at the very start and you're not going to be in profit immediately, but thinking with that, you're happy with how it's going and you're on track, if you like. If you're not, if you're not making profit, if you've been putting books out there and they're not selling, any of those kinds of things, or if you're dry and joyless and feeling like, oh, this is all too much, I can't cope, I'm overwhelmed, or I'm bored, this isn't working for me anymore, I'm just cranking the stuff out, the pleasure part, then that's what this annual workshop is for. It's about reconnecting with why you're doing this thing and making sure you're working from your deepest and your highest motives. And that gives you this incredible power called creative flow. So in one mind mode, what I call the conditioned conventional mind mode, we're distractible, we're undisciplined, we're lazy, we're whatever we want to call ourselves. Busy is also over busy is also a sign of that. But in creative flow, we're not. When we're in flow, everything just happens so easily and is so much more than can happen with just the kind of tick the box mind. And that's the danger of the list. The other danger of the to-do list is that it never goes away.
No.
So you never get a sense of accomplishment. So the important thing about this go creative method is that you are actually setting intentions at the beginning. So you come back from the year into the quarter, back from the quarter into the month, back from the month into the week, back from the week into the day, and you have your day, which would tell you what you're doing, what the shape of the day looks like and the step that you are taking that day. And we have a Facebook group where at the beginning of the week, we set our intentions for the week. And then at the end of the week, we're under the three hats, maker, manager, marketeer. And then we come back at the end of the week and note the accomplishments. And sometimes what we've accomplished is not what we intended on Monday. Friday's accomplishments look different. Sometimes, it's a great week and more than you intended happened, or something marvelous happens. Sometimes it's not a great week. That's fine. You just carry over into the next week. But that's it. You've always accomplished something, unless you haven't managed to get to the desk at all, in which case it's worth noting that. And if that's happening regularly, then there are ways to kind of get behind that and find out why. That's the other thing with the creative planning method, is understanding the dynamics of resistance and block and the ways in which they present for you.
That's amazing. So there's a Facebook group linked up to that. So you're all checking in, is that right?
Yes.
So everybody's accountable?
Yes, exactly. So how it works is the annual planning happens, and that's open to everybody. And then there's a group that I work with of patrons on Patreon, and they come to a monthly workshop, which kind of keeps us going through. And both those who attended just the annual one and are happy to go on their own, there are planners which people can purchase, and there are also PDFs which go with the workshop which you can download, and there are PDFs which people receive every month. Keep you online, so make it very easy for you to fill out what's going on within this structure. So yeah, that's essentially how it works. And then the Facebook group is the accountability group. The Facebook group is where you come in and say, okay, this week maker did such and such, marketer didn't do anything at all, but manager has that sorted now for next week and is going to make sure that marketer gets the resources they need to make what they intended to do happen, or thrown out those intentions and got new ones, because it is a creative process and things are constantly unfolding, and it allows for that. So that's the problem with most planning methods, is they're too structured, they're too managerial. They don't allow for the maker and the unpredictability of creativity, the messiness, the need to sometimes not know what the heck you're doing, but you're doing something to report into people who get that and who have been there and who understand how it feels and who are all working from a similar sort of process. It has been very useful for people. I know it's very useful for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the way I work as well. Knowing I'm being accountable to someone makes me get the stuff done. Absolutely. But it's also good, I suppose, with a group like this as well. You'd be able to reflect on what you have done, which a lot of people don't. And you can, like you said, can become busy. The to-do list is there all the time, and you can feel like you're not being rewarded or you're not getting ahead. When really, if you look back, then you can actually see all the stuff that you have completed, which is amazing. Can I ask, just off the top of your head, say what would be like an example? I'll use my own circumstance. So 2 sort of independently published books, just starting to put them out there. So in my annual planning, do you suggest the maker, the marketer, and the managerial hat, you're supposed to be doing these 3 hats on a weekly basis, or each one comes into play like different times throughout the year from your plan? Does that make sense?
So yes, absolutely. It's a really good question. So I think and encourage, I believe it's important to touch in with all 3 all the time. And so on a weekly basis to do something and to recognize that you're doing something from a managerial perspective, recognize when you're doing something from a marketing perspective and so on. So it can be something really, really small though. What will happen then is as the year is unfolding, different hats will be on your head for a longer period of time. You'll be giving more attention, obviously, to the marketing hat when you're launching a book, as an example. So, or when you're deciding, okay, I'm going to get serious now about selling these, it's time to set up a promotion, set an intention. I'm going to sell 1,000 books in the next 3 months or whatever it might be. It doesn't matter what the intention is. It doesn't matter if it's much smaller than that or much bigger than that. That's irrelevant. But every single day, we can do a little something that helps to put our book out there, which is marketeer's job. Every single day we can do something that keeps an eye on money flow and time, our pacing, our self-care. Another thing we focus on is creative work, rest and play. So rest and play get as much attention in this method as work, because rest and play for the creative are actually the process. They're not breaks from the process. They actually are the process. And the more we recognize that and bring them into our planning, the more flow we get. So it's kind of keeping in touch with it at a smaller level all the time, but then knowing sometimes you've got to go really deep into the writing, for example, into the maker mode, or sometimes an example would be we ignore how challenging it can be to make, in inverted commas, our social media posts. And so recognizing that is a creative task, just like writing your book, and you need to bring that level of attention to it. So that's a maker hat task. And then when you put on the maker hat, you approach it differently than if you see it as a business task, where you're just trying to get through it managerially, get the posts out, and, so that sort of distinction. So yeah, to answer your question, keep in touch with all 3 on a regular basis, and then emphasize at all times you're emphasizing one over the other.
Yeah, no, fantastic.
What it is I do this paid live training session really of the annual workshop. And then from that group, some of them will go into become planning for profit patrons on my Patreon, which is limited, the number of places that I have there. And then that group gets a monthly workshop on a particular theme, but the planning is going on all the time. So we check in with the plans each month. They receive downloadable plans for that month, which they fill out. It's self-directed, so each person will be filling them out completely differently. It's like throwing out a prompt for a poem, No 2 plans are going to look the same, but they all fit into that overall structure. And it's just ongoing because the planning doesn't stop. And I'm just there as a resource where they can ask their questions about the particular stage that they're at, or if we get into more practical questions as well. So that monthly workshop is an opportunity to just tap in and get specific help on a particular issue, as well as doing the plans. And we focus on a particular theme. So it might be a marketing theme, it might be a maker theme, it might be a manager theme. The manager themes tend to be around money, things like, pay yourself first would be a theme that we would explore. Why? So we're always looking at the why and the how as well as the what. So on a theme like that, we would explore, why aren't you paying yourself first? What script are you saying in your mind? Oh, when I make enough money, I'll pay myself, but now I don't have the resources, you know. Well, is that true? And if you were to approach it in a different way, how might that happen? And then different members of the group will put in their experience about when their mind mode shifted and how they did things differently. And then we set the plans for the month based around what emerges in the workshop.
Oh, that's amazing. And so when you set the plans, is these steps that people have to take to achieve the plan, are they, like you said, it's just small actionable steps each day that will fit, say, that person's personality or schedule or what they can achieve, obviously based on their personal circumstance, I suppose.
100%. Yeah. So the resources of time and money and space and place and all of those things vary completely from author to author. So obviously somebody who's working full time is in a completely different situation to somebody who has a full-time job and the kids to look after as well, you know. So the amount of time, the space, the money you have available, all these things are variable. So the panel completely allows for that, and you just fill out your own. The value of the workshops, I mean, there's lots of value to them, I think, but one of the things that's really valuable is that you do the work there and then. You turn up for the workshop, you fill your plans, you know what you're doing for the month, and you know what you're doing for the 4 weeks, and you know what you're doing, you know, you're breaking it down in the workshop and making the plan for the month to come, as well as going in depth in some particular aspect of the planning.
And then obviously, I guess like the following month, if some people, like you said, some things might not go to plan, you know, life gets in the way. Is that just sort of spent kind of reassessing or just moving forward with the next section? Or
the beginning is always a review. And then you have a look and see how it went, and we have various kind of score sheets for, you know, your satisfaction with different aspects, again under the 3 hats, which break down into different things. So yeah, you just do a quick review, look at how it went. It doesn't really matter what happened before, and that's important. It only as learning, and you just take the learning forward, and then you look at where you are this month. The other thing is that some people can't attend live, and so it's recorded, and the workshop is there for people to do in replay, or for those who did attend live to go back if there's something that they want to particularly focus in on. So you don't have to do it live, you can do it in your own time. It suits you better. Obviously, it's at a set time. It doesn't particularly suit. It's actually 5 p.m. UK, so a lot of our Australian patrons.
Yeah, I think that's
do it in replay.
Probably like 1-2 in the morning or something.
Exactly. That's not ever going to work. Exactly. But replay works just fine. It doesn't have to be live.
Yeah. So the people that go on to your limited space profit planning?
Yeah, planning for profit.
Yeah. They generally all start at the same time. And if it's annually, like at the end of the year, does everybody kind of do like a big reflection, big review, or it just carries on? Yeah.
We just finished our annual review.
Oh, wonderful.
We do that in November. Yeah, and that kind of preps people to get ready for the planning then, which happens at the end of December for the year to come. But it's a rolling thing. So, you know, the other thing about the patron is people move in and move out as they need it, you know, so you don't have to be there all the time. And it's designed in that way that you can, you know, opt in for a few months and then opt out, or you can stay. So some people have been there since the very first annual planning session. They're still there. And then others have come in since. And yeah, it's limited space wise because it's not a big webinar. It is a workshop, and people need space to speak and to ask questions and to feel safe as well, I think, and to feel people are getting to know each other. And in these workshops sometimes, because you are dealing with things around resistance and block and stuff like that, there's always a deeper reason, and sometimes that can actually be, you know, quite challenging for people. So the space needs to be safe, so it can't be a huge big thing.
Which sounds like you're tying in the work that you've previously done, you know, with the writing therapy and to get to the root of someone's creative blocks, I suppose, to move them forward, which is amazing. How long has the workshops been going, the live workshop been going, and the annual planning? Have you been doing it a while, or?
Yes, I've been doing it for a good while now. I can't say exactly when. I think
Yeah.
May 2020 it just started.
Ah, yeah, fantastic. What's been the general consensus since you've been going, the feedback you've had?
Yeah, the feedback for those who, you see, it's not for everybody. And I think that's the important thing to say. Any planning method is very personal. And so it's either and also the way I approach it. I mean, one guy said to me, sorry, Orna, I know what you're doing is good, but I can't take all that touchy-feely, self-helpy stuff. He was gone pretty quickly, and that's absolutely fine. Yeah, the feedback we've seen people do amazing things and change rapidly and make big transformations. And then there are other people who are quietly working away, step by step, building things slowly, book by book, asset by asset. So again, it's very personal how people respond. Everything you need is there if this kind of way of thinking and working speaks to you. It's definitely a powerful process. It's not my process, it's your process.
Yeah.
All it does is gives a container for the power of your creative process to actually assert itself. And it's really very much about getting out of your own way. We all have this tremendous power within, but it's overlaid with a whole load of stuff that we've picked up along the way, learned from society, learned from previous experiences and so on, and just getting out of our own way so that we can get into what I call the create state, so that flow can happen. And that's where the play and the rest becomes very important. Resting in a particular way that reinvigorates your creative process, playing in a particular way that does the same thing. These are really important components of it.
Yeah, well, it sounds absolutely phenomenal. Can you please tell us when is the next, live workshop going to be? And please tell us all the details.
Yes, so the annual planning this year will be on Christmas Eve, so the 30th of December, and it will be at 5 p.m. UK time. The notice is up at selfpublishingadvice.org/annual planning, and that will give you an idea of exactly what to expect. And it is £29 to attend the planning session.
Fantastic. But anybody like ourselves, possibly in Australia, we can do the replay and
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You get it as replay. It won't be a webinar pretending to be current. It will clearly be a replay. But yeah, once you join the Patreon group, you get everything. So all the replays are there from the start, or a year's worth, actually. I think it is. Yeah, goes back to the previous year. Yeah, because there's no point in duplicating some of the stuff that's happened before. And then there are bonus ones on particular topics that we've carried forward that we did prior to that year. So when you're in the Patreon setup, you can have access to all of it.
And you can ask, because obviously, let's say we get the replays and things like that, but the live people, they can ask questions, whereas say the replay, how do they contact? Is that through the
Facebook? By email. That's by email.
So
that's got to be by email. But any question, anytime, during the month, once you're a patron, your question gets priority, and it will be answered directly by myself, or if there's somebody better, somebody who's more clued in on a specific topic, then you'll get an answer from them.
No, well, it sounds absolutely amazing, and I'm blown away. It's definitely so much more than what I thought annual planning is. And a lot more in-depth thinking about all those aspects of your business and actually motivating yourself to achieve those, I guess, with a year in mind, rather than just say a week here and there and floundering around and then getting lost. And that could maybe even be the reason, just not having gone that whole year in planning, just a couple of bits here and there. So no, it sounds amazing. Well, thank you so much, Orna, for lending us your time and your expertise. And can you tell us, where can our listeners discover you, your work, Alliance of Independent Authors, and just everything on and offline?
Yeah, so the Alliance of Independent Authors is the professional association for self-publishing writers, and that's at allianceindependentauthors.org. And members get all sorts of benefits and advantages, but also the Alliance works as an advocacy group for independent authors within the publishing sector and the self-publishing sector. So we're constantly trying to improve things. So that's the Alliance. And as one of the things that the Alliance does is it runs a self-publishing advice centre. So that's at selfpublishingadvice.org. And there is a blog there and a podcast. And again, it's divided out into the 7 stages, the 7 processes of publishing. So editorial, design, production, distribution, marketing, promotion, and rights licensing. So if you have a question on any of those stages of the publishing process, you can just jump in and use the search box, and that will throw up lots of podcasts and blog posts on that topic. And yeah, my own writing happens at ornaross.com. That's historical fiction and inspirational poetry.
Amazing. I'm just like, how do you even have the time for that as well? With all the other things.
Oh, that's the foundation of it all.
Yeah, through annual planning.
Yes, indeed.
That's it. Well, thanks so much, Orna. That was amazing.
Thank you, Joanne. Thanks so much. Bye-bye now.
So there you have it, folks, the super insightful and enlightening Orna Ross. And I'm really looking forward to checking out Orna's live workshop and annual planning for creatives via her Patreon. Next time on the Hybrid Author Podcast, we have writer, author, lecturer, ex-newspaper and TV journalist Robin Young, and she's going to be talking to us about making decisions to make things happen, which I think is quite relevant to this time of year. You know, people wind down, but your mind's got to be in next year for what you want to do and whatnot. Be ahead of the game by thinking about it now. I wish you well in your author adventure this next week. That's it from me. It's bye for now. That's the end for now, authors. I hope you're further forward in your author adventure after listening, and I hope you'll listen next time. Remember to head on over to the Hybrid Author website at www.hybridauthor.com.au to get your free author pass. It's bye for now.